Hi, Trevor here, reflecting on life through music. Welcome and thank you for stopping by. It's fantastic you are here. Well, I trust you enjoyed my last video from Creedence Clearwater Revival. And through this unfortunate son, we talked about being people of integrity, where our words and our actions match up with each other. Well, we're going from there to a bunch of guys that were formed in Newcastle, the UK in 1962. So, of course, we all know how amazing the 60s were in the UK with the Beatles, the Rolling Stones and a few others. Well, these guys were already also in there as well. We had John Still on drums, Hilton Valentine on guitar, Alan Price on keyboards, Chaz Chandler on bass and Eric Burdon on lead vocals. Now, the minute you mention those five names, you know exactly who I'm talking about. We're talking about the Animals. Of course, quite a unique lineup, these guys, with guitar, bass, drums, keys and lead vocals, and bringing the organ into the world was something that these guys had a lot to do with. And of course, bands like Deep Purple came on a bit later and really capitalised even more on that. And certainly between 1964 and 1965, there were 5 studio albums. Gee, how many albums is that in 2 years? Then 1967 to 1968, when the name was changed to Eric Burdon and the Animals, another 5 albums at that point. So a lot of output in a very short space of time. Now I'm going to get on to the song that you have to talk about when you talk about the Animals in a minute. And I think this song just shows off the Animals and how good these guys are musically. I mean, we're talking about iconic guitar riff in this song. We're talking about incredible keyboard solo in this song. We're talking about obviously a very tight rhythm section, drums and bass to be able to keep the whole thing going. And of course, Eric Burdon's voice is pretty amazing. But before I get on to that song, a little bit more about these guys. Obviously there's some iconic riffs in their songs. The keyboards I've already talked about, Eric's fantastic voice. These guys were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1994. In fact, it was Bruce Springsteen who quoted the Animals saying, these guys were a bit of a revelation to me when I was starting out my career, very influential in my own career. Of course, the Animals are in the UK, Bruce Springsteen's in the US. Just goes to show that these guys have had worldwide appeal and success. And Tony Banks for Genesis cites Alan Price as a major influence in his own career as he took on the keyboard role in Genesis. And so there's some very high accolades indeed about the musicians in this band. Of course, and Eric Burdon's voice is pretty amazing, and I've got some clips coming up in a minute that just shows how good his voice is and how good the Animals are. Now, what's the song we need to talk about when we talk about the Animals? House of the Rising Sun. Eric Burdon, this is a song that Eric Burdon's been cited as saying this is a song he was born to sing, because it just really showed off his voice and what the song is about and all the rest of it to an absolute T. This came off the album at the Animals of 1964. Now, the House of the Rising Sun, what it's about, well, I think there's one line that pretty well sums this song up. Being the ruin of many a poor boy, and God, I know I'm one. As I look up the meaning of this song, I get pretty well the same thing each time. That is, it seemed like a house of disrepute, a house where kind of things went a bit wrong and it was a bit of a spot for all sorts of interesting people to hang out. And it certainly became that had that kind of aura about it. And given this song, this House of the Rising Sun got put into a bit of an iconic characteristic in the world. Now, I think what this song also has underneath it as well is a bit of a warning. It's a bit of a warning about not going to the House of the Rising Sun, because it's been the ruin of many a poor boy. And I know that from practical experience, sings the guy who wrote this song. Of course, the Animals didn't write this song. This was a cover of someone else who had done it previously. And I think that the takeaway at the House of the Rising Sun is this. You know what? If you were to walk past the House of the Rising Sun, you'd be thinking, nah, I'm not going to go in there. Nah, I'm just going to walk straight past it, and I'm just going to heed the warning that this place puts out. But that's in a world where warnings can be really, really obvious. What about when they're not so obvious? And I think we find, where we do find ourselves getting into habits that's a little bit disruptive. Do you think one minute we sort of don't have a habit, and then the next minute we do? Now it kind of creeps up on us gradually. I think gambling's one of those things. Now, if you are a gambler out there, I'm not judging you here. I'm just making some observations. That in Australia, we're a bit of a gambling country, really, in lots of ways. There's always a way to put a bet on something, and in our ads we have to say gamble responsibly. Well, that's all very, very nice to say that, but when you're in the moment and you're wanting to actually gamble, do you kind of remember that stuff? Well, not really. So all we can do is we can just monitor ourselves and work out what we can do to minimise the effect. But I think the question of the House of the Rising Sun is, how good are we at heeding warnings? We hear a warning. Well, obviously, if we're on a road going somewhere and we hear a sign and we see a warning, we think, well, yeah, okay, well, let's do that one because, our life's at stake if we don't heed that warning. Like a speed limit or a bend in the road or something like that. But, what about something less obvious? Like, we might have a glass of wine and then we have a glass of wine the night after that, the night after that, and the night after that. Next minute we're drinking a bottle a night, and then we might go on to other stuff. When do we know the habit has actually taken hold? And when can we actually say, no, I'm not going to do that tonight, and break the habit? Do we heed the warnings? People around us might be saying, hey, I'm not quite sure here. I mean, are you sure you're going okay? And you say, yeah, I'm fine, no worries. And so we kind of put a hand up to the warning and say, no, I don't need the warning. That's all good. I'm not going to worry right now. Well, I think the challenge of the House of the Rising Sun today is the fact that often we do get warnings and we need to pay more attention to them than we do. Because what's a warning? If you think about a guardrail on a road, the guardrail isn't right at the spot where the bad stuff is. It often happens beforehand as well, and may continue through it. There's a bit of a thing to say, look, we're just letting you know that there's a bit of a corner coming up, and we put a guardrail here because we don't want you to fall over the edge. But there are guardrails in other parts of our life too. You can think about maybe our work. The fact we've got to get there at a certain time and all the rest of it. Do we really make every effort we can to get there on time? And if we don't, is that a bit of a warning that something's not right? Or what about the fact that we may not have as much money in the account as we think? We're thinking, wow, where did all the money go? And do we stop and really think, oh, okay, so I went to the pub and gambled every night last week. Maybe that's where it went? Or I went to the pub and just drank every night. Are we heeding the warnings of that? So rocking up to work. And together with drinking is like the whole loss of routine and the whole loss of, control of our lives. Are we heeding the warnings? Or what about in a relationship where someone may say, look, I just don't feel like you're giving me the priority that being your significant other kind of wants. And they say that a few times and you still don't heed the warning, you still don't make any changes. The next minute the person's not in your life anymore. There are warnings all around us, but I think as human beings we're a little bit reluctant to actually heed the warnings, and we just carry on thinking, oh, it'll be okay. And it's till it's too late. The warning's no longer a warning, it's now the reality. I think the challenge of House of the Rising Sun today is very much, let's not walk into houses of the rising sun. So whatever that House of the Rising Sun is for you right now, heed the warnings. Heed the drinking every night, or the loss of money in your bank account, or a relationship that's struggling a little bit. Please heed those warnings and make an adjustment before it's too late. And for you out there who have heeded a warning and have actually made a change before it's too late, well done, because that means there's wisdom there and you're paying attention to the bigger picture. Because quite often the habits that we make are very much in the feeling part of our brain. It makes us feel good, and we don't necessarily think about what we're doing until it's too late. So let's engage our thinking brains a little bit more earlier and say, do we really need that drink tonight, or do we really need to gamble before the habit takes over? So I trust that will be an encouragement for you today. If you're in this kind of habit forming phase right now, can seriously ask for you to think about what you're doing and whether you can make a change before it's too late. Well, I trust that will all be an encouragement for you today. Well, on to the clips. Now, as I've said, you cannot talk about the animals without talking about House of the Rising Sun. And all the clips I've got today are live versions, which is pretty cool, actually. So we do have House of the Rising Sun, as I said, not written by the animals. It was a cover, but they brought all the iconic stuff into this song, the guitar riff, which we all know, and the keyboard riff, and the solid bass section. Of course, what can we say about Eric Burdon's vocals? He believed he was born to sing this song. And so when you put those five together, we got pretty much a super group here of the 1960s. Very tight musically and not scared to bring in all sorts of interesting things to make the song interesting. So we've got a live version of House of the Rising Sun, very much again from the US, which is great to see that they were getting success all around the world. We got to get out of this place. Now, I first heard this song by the Angels in Australia. I thought it was one of theirs, and then I realised, hang on a minute, no, this is by the Animals as well. Another iconic song with lots of amazing guitarists and everything, and the bass line, what we can say about the bass line, pretty cool. Came off the album Animal Tracks from 1965. This is a live version. And then we've also got Don't Let Me Be Understood. Now that also came off Animal Tracks from 1965, and a really amazing guitar riff in that one again. As I said, these guys were just all round incredible musicians, really. And when you put the five of them together, a powerhouse, that is for sure. So the links to those three songs are in the description below. And I've also included my last video from Creedence Clearwater Revival. So if you want to recap on that one, feel free. Well, if you've come back for another one, or this is your first time to Life Reflections Through Music, welcome to the channel, and thanks for everybody for hanging around to the end. We're loving to get this sort of engagement. And thank you for those people recently who have been liking videos as well. It's always really great to get that. Well, that's it for today. Next time we're going to go on to Carole King, and of course she had the album Tapestry, which was a pretty iconic album in the 70s. So until then, I'll catch you around. Bye for now.